And to provide more analysis, joining us from Cairo is Dr. Khalid Dawood, Al Ahram Weekly Managing Editor, and from Ramallah, Mr. Ahmed Fattouh, Fatah spokesperson. A very warm welcome to In Depth and to the program, and thank you for joining us and for your time. Dr. Dawood, considering the immense destruction and rebuilding costs, how will the upcoming Cairo conference secure crucial funding without succumbing to external political conditions?
Hello, Rana. Thanks for having me. I think the priority before the Cairo conference and the reason behind its repeated delay is the fact that nobody's sure yet on the stability of the ceasefire that's been into effect in Gaza for more than 2 weeks right now, mainly because of fears that Israel is looking for any excuse to break and breach that ceasefire agreement and resume the bombing and killing people in Gaza again, as we have seen in Israel's threats over the recovery of the deceased bodies of Israeli detainees who remain to be held in Gaza. So this is one remaining stumbling block. And then the second stumbling block would be assuring that Israel carries out its obligations and implement or start to implement the second stage of the agreement, which of course includes more Israeli withdrawals behind the so-called yellow line and to assure the control of Palestinians over more of their territory. The problem, Rana, is that so far the Israelis and unfortunately the American mediators such as Garrett Kushner have been stating that no reconstruction is going to take place in the areas beyond the yellow line, or basically the reconstruction and recovery will happen in areas that are nearly empty of residents and that are currently occupied by the Israeli army. So that's another issue that needs to be settled. And of course, as you mentioned in your report, the issue of the multinational force or the stability force, whatever it's named, that's supposed to be deployed in Gaza. Who's going to make up that force? What the mandate of the force is? I mean, these are all very complicated issues besides the Israeli repeated concerns and threats over the issue of the disarmament of Hamas. So, I mean, again, the Cairo conference for the recovery in Gaza will definitely be successful only if we are sure that the ceasefire is permanent and the Israelis are going to carry out their obligations, particularly in terms of further withdrawals from the Gaza Strip.
Mr. Fattouh, with Hamas coordinating with the Red Cross in Rafah and digging in Khan Yunis, isn't it already acting as Gaza's de facto authority?
Thank you for having me. Hamas is acting as the de facto government since 2007, since they made their coup, and when they kidnapped the authority by force and enforced their self on the governance. So that is nothing new, and unfortunately, we have an issue here that Hamas need to realize that we are after the Palestinian state with one system, one political system, one law, and one Palestinian agenda with one Palestinian security forces. Until now, Hamas has been ambiguous and clear about these decisive issues. They are still not very clear in their political position. One day they say we want to step down from power. The other day, as you say, they are enforcing their forces and moving in the ground to enforce themselves and speak about that we are the day after. This is very
sir,
critical.
I just want to ask you here a question. Is the concept of Hamas is enforcing and helping, is it out of the fact that Hamas is looking for the deceased bodies of the Israelis that Israel is waiting for? Or is it on the ground they are helping?
Well, you asked me, are they the de facto government? So I was telling you that they have been in 2007. But why they are there, that's a different story. They are looking for, of course, the deceased prisoners. And Israel is putting that as an excuse and justification for not going to phase two. Now, we have to understand here what are the driving engine behind the Israeli occupation. The Israeli occupation don't want to go to phase two. This is very clear. They don't want to go into implementing the two-state solution because that is mentioned within the Trump plan, even though that it is indirect, but it speaks about in term 19 and term 20 about a Palestinian aspiration to go for a two-state solution. And we have to address the fact that the international donors, the international community is working in this plan within that framework. So as long as Israel continue in phase one and extend it indefinitely, that will mean they will avoid going into an actual solution. So Hamas are trying to find these bodies. We are not sure about the technical issues, but we are sure that Gaza is decimated. There is a shortages in tools and engines to go after these deceased bodies. And we have also to speak about the Palestinian deceased bodies under rubble. They are worried about how much left, 12 or 13. There is more than 10,000 Palestinian bodies under rubble. Nobody speak about them, unfortunately, in this dark reality. Israel need to be faced by the international community that stop putting pretext. These dead bodies is gonna be found eventually and is gonna be submitted to them. So let's go for phase two, and that is the important issue that would deal with the core issues of the conflict of Palestine and Israel.
Dr. Dawood, the New York Times suggests that the visits by Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Israel are not enough. What kind of sustained high-level diplomatic initiative is actually required from the Trump administration to prevent the loss of momentum?
Well, Rana, I think everybody would agree that the decision maker in this process in terms of influence over Israel is Trump personally. So, I mean, but again, I think that the repeated visits by the U.S. officials, the top ones, Vice President Vance and Mr. Rubio, as well as the top negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are all indications sending a message to the Israeli side that the Americans, they want to proceed with the plan. But, I mean, allow me to also comment on what Mr. Fattouh mentioned, because I don't think that he would disagree with me that the Palestinians in Gaza have been through a horrific, horrible experience over 2 years of war. And that the Israelis, they do not want Hamas in Gaza, but they also do not want Fatah or the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. So, I mean, we're now dealing with a disastrous situation. Hardly, I mean, we're talking from October 12 up until today, hardly 3 weeks. And there is no, of course, preparation or indication that the Israelis are going to accept an immediate deployment of forces that follow the Palestinian Authority, which is definitely the legitimate authority. But what I was hoping, because that's another point that the Israelis take as an excuse, is that there's no agreement among the Palestinians on the future governors of Gaza. So I was hoping that, the Palestinians, the Fatah, as well as Hamas and the rest of the Palestinian factions would act in a manner that overcome past differences about the coup of 2006 or 7, and the later fight that maintained the division between Gaza and the West Bank, while acknowledging, again, I don't think Mr. Fattouh would disagree, that Netanyahu and his extremist government intentionally deepened the division between Gaza and the West Bank to delay the establishment of a Palestinian state. I mean, again, Hamas has repeatedly, at least judging by the statements made by Mr. Khalil al-Hayya, that they present, the top negotiator or the leader of Hamas right now, is that they presented names of independent Palestinians who can run the day after, that they do not want to, I mean, I don't think really logically, Rana, I mean, anybody wants to be responsible for running Gaza right now. It's like Jared Kushner himself said it looks like it was nuked by the Israelis, but of course he didn't say it was nuked by the Israelis, just say it looked like it was nuked. But so for this reason, I was hoping that Palestinians would, like Palestinian key factions, mainly the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, would overcome their differences in order to say to the Israelis that our priority right now is to end the occupation of Gaza. We're going to take care of our affairs. We're going to have an independent, technocratic government, whatever they want to call it. And then, of course, Egypt and Jordan are very much ready to help the Palestinian Authority. They have already announced that they have thousands of Palestinians who are being trained to become police force in Gaza. So, I mean, there's no questioning or any objection to the Palestinian Authority taking over responsibility for Gaza. But I'm sure that Mr. Fattouh and all Palestinians recognize that that's not the possible prospect at the time. We are facing intentional Israeli policies aimed at dividing Gaza, maintaining security control over Gaza. I mean, and as Mr. Fattouh mentioned, unfortunately, the world maintains the same double standards about the top concern with the Israeli deceased hostages, ignoring the people under the rubble, but also even in terms of the return of Palestinian bodies. They just given totally unidentified bodies. Palestinians do not have the capabilities or the labs to get the DNA to identify those people, and that's another aspect that the American mediators and like the rest of the Western world are not giving enough concern that Palestinians have equal rights to be treated as human beings, whether in terms of the burial of their deaths or recovering those who are under the rubble.
And Hamas also is asking for help
Indeed. And Egypt did not immediately responded to Palestinian demands for help. And as you've seen, as immediately after the Egyptian equipment went into Gaza yesterday, today in Khan Yunis, as you mentioned, I think they are going to announce soon the recovery of one body. So, I mean, again, this issue about the deceased bodies, even the American president recognized that, I mean, and I think even the Israelis, that out of the 13 remaining bodies, maybe 6 or 7 might not ever be found. And that's not because Hamas doesn't want to find them. They gave back 20 living hostages, which is the most
Mr. Dawood, I'll come back to you again and ask you about what about the bodies of the dead Palestinians under the rubble today. But Mr. Fattouh, do you want to comment on what Mr. Khalid said with regards, of course, to your answer and your comments?
Well, I respect his input and I agree with most of it, but thank you. But I have to correct a few points.
Go ahead,
the
sir.
agreement. Thank you very much. Of course, the Arabs and Egypt played a major role into forming the Arab and Islamic plan, which has stated and spoke about government clearly about how the temporary committee from independence would govern Gaza until we recover, and that committee would report back to the official Palestinian government. Now, why we insist on that term, how to be linked to the Palestinian government? Because we want the two-state solution. We want the Palestinian state, we want the Palestinian independence. And as Mr. Dawood said, this is not a matter of conflict, actually. The entire Arab world agree with it, and the Europeans. What is crippling or made things more complicated, let's say, is Hamas' recent statement with the number of Palestinian factions who were not all the Palestinian factions. It was missing 7 Palestinian factions. But they have said that we go for an independent committee, not a committee of independence. And that made some sort of, some scary to the people, and something that we are afraid of that phrasing. And also did not say clearly that it reported back to the Palestinian government, that it referenced the Palestinian state. Now, this would mean that if implemented, that would increase the division, perpetuate the division, and that is in service of the Israeli occupation. I don't believe there is any Palestinian disagree with us right now that we are after the Palestinian state, that this committee report back to the Palestinian state. So that was not clear by Hamas, although that we have went for that in the first Arab plan that was devised a year ago between the Palestinian government and Egypt, then was later more improved by Egypt and the Arab world, then adopted by the Arab League, then adopted by the Islamic cooperation, and then adopted by the international community, and was declared unfairly enhanced, actually, by the New York summit in July in the UN, where they issued the Declaration of New York that had all the points of that Arab plan that we agreed on, and Hamas was one of that bodies that and parties that we agreed with in them. Now, this new statement made things more complicated. We need from Hamas a clear position here. And I think, as you said, and as your honorable guest said, we are in a very devastated situation. Gaza is destroyed. The Palestinian cause on the verge of this obliteration, and we see the schemes of the Israeli occupation that want to undermine the Palestinian state, that say no Palestinian Authority and no Palestinian state.
Then
Now
it's
we have
like
to
we
face.
said, sir, it's a ceasefire that brings silence, but did not bring peace yet.
We have to push into the two-state solution. This is
How
part
do you
of
want
our
to push, sir?
by having a solid position, by having a unified position. We already have a unified position with the Arab world, the Islamic world, and most of the Palestinian factions. Hamas is still yet not there yet to say, yes, I want this 100% with all its terms, with all support, that we want a Palestinian state from Gaza to the West Bank under one law, one system, and one security force. Then we go to election. We have spoke clearly how we would end the division within 1 year after the ceasefire, an actual ceasefire, and starting the reconstruction of Gaza. We will go to elections, and whoever wins, continue with the government, and we will give them every support to do that, to face the Israeli occupation. Our struggle is liberation. It's not about governance. And when we talk about liberation, I want to liberate the state of Palestine, not Gaza, not West Bank alone. I want to include.
We also want to liberate the state of Palestine. And Dr. Dawood, does Jordan's refusal to send troops and Israel's veto over Turkey mean the US-backed international force is already dead on arrival? And sir, again, I ended my question, your words previously by asking you, I'll be back again, and asking you, what about the bodies of the Palestinians that is under the rubble till today? And we're looking for 8 Israeli Palestinians, 8 Israeli deceased or detainees till today.
Well, again, let me take the first question. I mean, I cannot say that the International Stabilization Force is dead before it's actually created, because the point of view that was expressed by the Jordan King in his interview yesterday, I think, is shared by all the possible candidates for the formation of this force, let it be Egypt or Indonesia or Azerbaijan. And of course, Turkey was ready, but the Israelis said they don't want any Turkish troops inside Gaza. But again, they all share the point of view that we are not going, or they are not going to do Israel's dirty work. They are not going to turn into an occupation force serving Israeli.
And sir, do you think Israel will stop its dirty works?
I mean, that's what the Israelis expect. I mean, this issue of insisting on disarmament, insisting on the radicalization, decomplication, all these, terms that the Israelis repeatedly use are clearly, aimed at basically only liquidating and ending Hamas, and while not offering anything in terms of the other issues that are of prime concern to the Palestinians in terms of mainly further withdrawals from the Gaza Strip. I appreciate what Mr. Fattouh is saying about, the Palestinian state, and definitely that's the target.
He said we want a liberation Palestinian state. He's very clear, and this is his right and the right of his country.
Of course, it's not a reward, it's a right, like many people said.
But nobody is working on this, sir, in light of course, this fragile ceasefire, or a ceasefire that's all complicated and full of obstacles, with no consensus that anyone can reach. And Egypt is doing its best in light of all of this.
That's why I'm saying first comes first. First, right now, obviously, is assuring that the ceasefire in terms of killing of Palestinians become more stable. I mean, again, we're just reading a report that since the ceasefire went into effect nearly 3 weeks ago, there have been nearly 100 Palestinians who've been killed, 94 to be specific, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Israelis continue to bomb parts of Gaza. I mean, if we're talking about violations and claims of violations in terms of the delay in turning over the bodies of the detainees, the Israelis have basically, carried out dozens of violations since the ceasefire went into effect. And unfortunately, again, Mr. Marco Rubio of the U.S. Secretary of State, he stated yesterday that Israel did not violate the agreement by killing all those Palestinians or killing, suspected militants, because they still have the right to maintain their security, which is basically the same scenario as the Lebanon one. And that's why I'm saying, before we get into the fight over who will govern Gaza, I think we have several matters that we need to work on first as Palestinian Authority, supported by Arab countries, about making sure Israel carries out the plan as stated in terms of withdrawal, not just to the blue line, which is the second stage of withdrawal, but from all of Gaza, including the so-called buffer zones. And that includes, of course, Rana, as you know, the border between Egypt and Gaza, where there should not be any Israeli troops at all. The recovery and helping the people of Gaza is a top priority before anything, because those people, they have suffered.
Of course, sir, we want to reach a technocrat government as soon as possible to move on. And Mr. Fattouh, beyond the initial discussions of a technocrat government, and of course, liberation, as you mentioned, what tangible strategy will Fatah employ to re-enter Gaza and secure genuine popular legitimacy amid the rubble, sir?
As you know, we already devised a plan with our brothers in Egypt, a very strong plan that was later adopted by the Islamic community and the international community. And that plan is detailed about how we begin reconstruction, about all the technical details, and we have started discussing already the names of the committee of the technocrats and the independents from Gaza. And we say that this committee will be administered by a minister who is Majid Abu Ramadan, the health minister of the current Palestinian government. Now that position should come out as the position of all the Palestinian people and to go forward into the reconstruction when we enter phase 2. What is going to be now is we have to solidify our position and to be very clear about it, unequivocal, unambiguous, that this is our negotiation terms. Because we know that there is parties that want, of course, as the guest said, Vance did not see
Mr. Khalid Dawood mentioned, yes?
Yes, as Mr. Khalid Dawood mentioned that, he said that the 100 who were killed yesterday does not violate the ceasefire. So there is a work we have to do in order to bring more fairness into this deal and to enhance it further.
So
and
both
also
my
the Trump
guests,
deal did not discuss.
Both of my guests today see that there are a lot of issues and obstacles that have to be discussed to reach, as we said, not reach silence, but reach a real ceasefire in Gaza under a technocrat government led by Palestinians. Of course, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for your intake and valuable time and knowledge, and for your input. That was Dr. Khalid Dawood, Al Ahram Weekly Managing Editor, and Mr. Ahmed Fattouh, spokesperson. Thank you both for your special insights and your valuable discussion, and we will be looking forward, of course, and coverage minute by minute till we reach an end to what's happening. Gaza's silence speaks louder than war, but without sovereignty, aid, or unity, who will turn rubble into governance? This brings us to the end of today's episode of For In Depth. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more updates and Qnews. I'm Rana Qassas. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.